Welcome, friends. I am so thrilled to have Dr. Becky back. And today we are talking about boundaries. And I'm going to share some of my own. I'm going to sit in the chair or lay on the couch in front of Dr. Becky to try to help you learn. But what we really want to talk about through this episode is why boundaries matter in midlife, why that can kind of be a wake up call, and then how they can transform your life. And then I think Dr. Becky and I are going to get into some tools that can help you set good boundaries. So, Becky, welcome to Doing Life Different.
Thank you so much for having me. I love coming here and talking to you about these kinds of things. It's my favorite
Yes.
subject.
Well, and Dr. Becky, you are like one of our favorite guests, and I'm really excited because we're going to have you on more, which is really fun.
I'm so excited. This is just great. How did
I
I
love it.
how did I deserve this? This is too good.
Oh, you're just too good. I mean, go back and listen to the past episodes. You always have great insight for our listeners. But let's start today. Let's talk about boundaries and why are they important in midlife?
Well, I mean, it's not just midlife.
Right.
They're important throughout life, and our parents are supposed to teach us how to set boundaries with people. But the problem is that they don't. So a lot of us end up just sort of having the kind of boundary system that we grew up with. For instance, I grew up in a boundaryless family. My husband grew up in a walled off family. So I married a walled off guy and he married a formerly boundaryless girl. Now, boundaries are a human being's security system.
Well, and
They
I just want to add in, I think I love what you're saying, and it's so important to teach our kids this. And there are so many of us that didn't learn this. And I think they're important throughout your whole life, but I think they kind of hit you over the head midlife and beyond because you have all these different roles, right? And so you can't do it anymore. So you're like doing the career thing, you're being the mama. I've got the grandma thing going where I want to, watch those grandbabies, the wife, the caretaker. You've got paid parents that are aging. And then of course you going through something like I did was really eye-opening, and woo, I might be over giving. And it was maybe why I bring up midlife, Dr. Becky, is because that's when I really noticed it. That's when I was like, I can't even do this anymore. I can't survive. Like, it's making me sick.
well, I don't know if you've ever read about when we all eventually become senior citizens. A lot of senior citizens have formerly not had great boundaries, and just like you said, people get sick of themselves. They get sick of being taken advantage of, and so then they just get to where seniors so often will just go like, I don't they don't care
Right.
anymore. They
Forget
don't,
it. Right.
don't care if they
Well,
hurt your feelings.
yes, exactly. Exactly.
And so, yeah, there is a building of stress that comes along with not setting appropriate boundaries.
Which I
And
think can lead to like physical ailments as well. We know how important stress is in our body's health.
no, it's an epidemic problem that people don't set appropriate boundaries. And I used to be one of those. I used to not have a clue. I did not protect myself from boundary offenders. And
Hmm.
then the other side of boundaries is protecting yourself from getting harmed by people or taken
Hmm.
advantage of or manipulated or whatever. But it's also restraining yourself so that you don't violate or harm people. So you have to learn boundaries both ways. So very few people have ever learned anything about appropriate boundaries. So they're
Right.
winging it, and again, they're usually just using the boundary system that they grew up with. My mom was a world class elite athlete in pleasing. She was a
So am I.
Southern belle, and she wanted everybody to be happy, and she was very accommodating. And people might come over to our house, and my mother would be like, "Oh, this is just so," and then as soon as they would leave, she'd go, "I hate that one. Can you believe how awful she was?" Now, she should have said, my mother should have been setting boundaries with these people, but she would never. She wanted everybody to think everything was wonderful all the time, And so,
Right.
so that was one of my first realizations that, like, what the hell is this? Like,
Yes.
can you be yourself? Can you speak out for yourself instead of be a phony all the time?
Right.
Pretending that what you just did to me is okay when it's not.
Well, and
So go
Dr.
ahead.
Becky, I think what I have seen in my life too is the tremendous amount of freedom that I obtain when I set a boundary, and it's really hard for me. But when I have that boundary, I have time to like use my calling, to connect with God, to like live my purpose on life. But when I didn't have those boundaries, I was being sucked and I didn't even have time to look at. And I can use an example, and I don't want to get into too much detail because I don't want anyone to know who this person is, but I had a friend. Sometimes I call them frenemies, but she was a friend, and she could, it wasn't a healthy relationship. She could be nice to me. No one really cared for her because she was kind of one of those people that bragged, and I took her under my wing because I felt sorry for her, and her she was going through a divorce and she had a child, and so I just accepted it. And my husband would be like, she said something really mean, like she could say mean things. And then it was passive aggressive, and then it would kind of stop. So finally, it took her being unkind to another person who was kind of we had daughters the same age. And I think she was maybe jealous of this other mom or whatever it was. And that was where God went, that's done. And that's where I did the boundary, where I'm like, no, I can't be around this. And I let her know. And I tried to be healthy. And I thanked her for the things she had taught me. She was very service oriented. And so I like sent her a text, and she just kind of ignored that stuff and pretended we'd talk again. so, and here's the thing, Dr. Becky, my life is so much better now, and friendships have opened, but it didn't feel good. I was very uncomfortable for a very long time. Talk to me
because
about that.
because you thought you were doing something wrong, because you have an old belief or value from your past that setting boundaries with people is wrong. And
Mhm.
therefore, when you set one, you feel guilty about it. And that's what guilt is. Guilt is like, if I have a belief that it's wrong to steal, and I come over to your house and steal one of your rings, I'm going to feel guilty about it because I did something that is against my belief and value system. So part of the problem is, and especially pleasers, like
Ugh,
pleasers' belief system is you don't confront people, you don't make people feel uncomfortable, you're always pleasant, and all that kind of stuff. So pleasers usually perceive saying no, or please don't do that, or that's not appropriate, or whatever, as being a jerk or a witch.
mhm.
And it's actually not. I mean, we all have our comfort levels, and part of our protection with boundaries is, and when someone pushes beyond our comfort level, normally we give them little hints that, hey, let's change the subject, or too much information, or I don't like how you're talking about my friend, might be too much for somebody who's first learning
Right.
to set boundaries. But yeah, you're going to feel a certain kind of way because you're telling yourself that I'm being an unpleasant person, and being an unpleasant person is wrong. But unfortunately, like, I wrote a blog about this just in the last week or so, and I talk about how you can give people hints that I don't appreciate this, but we all know there's clueless people out there that don't take a hint, and the ones that don't take hints, I'm afraid you have to be mean to them. You have to be mean to them. There's some people that
Yes.
they don't understand anything else other than, okay, look, I tried to tell you nicely to leave me alone. And now I'm telling you, leave me the hell alone. I mean,
Yes.
you sometimes have to up the ante, and I hate that that's true. But I think another reason that you may feel bad about setting a boundary is you're valuing another person's comfort over your own. And you
Well,
have
and Dr. Becky, let's talk about that more because I'm working to get there. But how sad was it that I couldn't stop the friendship when it was hurtful to me? It only ended when it was hurtful to someone that I cared about.
well that that was not lost on me when you told. I heard that, and I was going to call you on it, and then we got on, off onto something else. But it did hurt my heart to, and a lot of us is like, some of my clients will set a boundary if it's for their child, you know,
Yeah.
but they won't do it for themselves. And
Yes.
the deal is that you've got to do it for yourself first, above everyone else. If you don't protect you, no one's going to protect you. and
Yes.
and there's boundary offenders out there by the zillion, and they can sense a person who's a nice guy and doesn't have good boundaries, and they will come in and try to use or take advantage of you or whatever.
Well, and Dr. Becky, I think that I can create monsters because I mean, my poor husband, now that I'm starting to have boundaries, he's just like, he's doing really well, but I think it's very uncomfortable, because this is different. This is not who he's been married to for all these years. Now, yeah, I'm very thankful that he is learning and growing and understanding because I'm like, I don't want to ever be sick again. Right. And I think this is a big part of it is learning how to take care of myself. I love that you said that. Do
Mhm.
it for yourself first. How many times do do we have to say that? That's one of those neuro linguistic programming things I need to stick in my head at night and just say, take care of yourself first, and then you will be able to care for others. So,
Well,
so important.
one of the most obvious symptoms of codependence and childhood developmental trauma is that you don't protect yourself. You don't have appropriate boundaries. So when you go into recovery from those things, you have to start practicing setting boundaries with people, and you have to notice what's going on in your body. Your body will warn. Your soul is sitting there on your shoulder all the time,
Yeah.
and it sees people coming at you and trying to take advantage of you and abusing you, or being inappropriate with you or whatever, and your soul is going, do something, but stop.
Yeah.
And so you've got to be listening to your body as it tells you and warns you that you need to set a boundary, and then do it, and it will reward you with relief.
Yeah. And what I have to say, you can say that sitting from where you are now. For me, it's a little uncomfortable. It's uncomfortable, Dr. Becky. I can't lie.
That you still have. You've
Yeah.
got to believe that your inner peace is more
Yes.
important than someone else's.
Yes. And
You,
and so I just want
you're,
listeners to,
you're the only one that's going to manage your peace and your environment.
Mhm.
And other adults are responsible to do that for themselves.
Right.
So you have to value your inner peace over anything else, and you fight for that like a warrior. And to do that, you have to keep people out who would do you harm, and you have to set boundaries.
Yep.
And it doesn't mean being a witch. It you do it with diplomacy
Mhm.
and softness and kindness, unless they can't take a hint. And then if they can't
Right.
take a hint, you have to be nasty.
Right, right. And I'm like even talking about it inside families with your adult children, they don't know that I need to get a workout in. They just think I can, you know what I mean? Unless I tell them, they think, well, grandma's probably free this day to watch the kiddos or whatever it is. So it's up to me to say what I need. So I love that you're saying that. And Dr. Becky, it's funny because I wrote down, I want it, and this is coming early, but I want it to at the end, and you'll have more tools, but to kind of tell people what can you do now if you have issues with boundaries. And my advice was to notice it, because I think that I just always ignored the little soul on my shoulder telling me this doesn't feel right. And now I'm aware of it in other relationships, sister-in-laws, whatever whatever it is, where, or, brother-in-laws or family members where you didn't realize you were doing an awful lot. And then when you stopped, they kind of stopped talking to you.
Well, that's when you realize you're in a one-sided relationship,
Well,
right?
yeah, and I didn't get it, and it still feels weird.
Yeah, in relationship with people, we have to tell them what's going on with us and what we need. And even as a grandmom and a mom like you are and I am, you have a right to tell your children that my schedule, my self-care, my interests come first. And if I have time, I would love to help you with the children if that's in fact how you feel. Like no one's
Yeah,
obligated to take care of their grandchildren, but if
yeah,
you really love and want to, then
which I do.
you can tell them, like I'm willing to do it. It just has to fit into my schedule so that they know that you might say, no, I'm doing something else. Like they don't
Right.
take you for granted or assume that you're going to do
Yes.
it.
I have another story that this reminded me of, and it was how I lived my whole life. I met a woman. I was working with Bob Goff on my book, which is super exciting. And there was another author working with him, and she told the story about, she's written published lots of books. And she was telling the story of how when she was young, and I think she wrote her first book, it was like she had 3 kids and she made it like, they shouldn't even know I'm doing this. She was like, this should not affect their lives. I'm going to be mom and I'm going to do this all on the side. And she said, then she worked so hard. And then all the books came and they were being they were being published. And her husband came and he said to their little ones, oh, look it, mommy wrote a book. No, she didn't. No, she really did. Mommy didn't write it because they didn't know. And then like he took them out of the box and said, see, look, there's mommy. And they're like, that's not mommy, because she was all like in lipstick. And it's like, why do we do that? Like, why? And I know I was like that. I was like, I'll be an attorney as long as it doesn't affect my children. You know what I mean? Or as long as they have their life and I'm there to take care of them, then I can move forward. So that resonated with me. That story was like, ooh, I was a little like that.
Well, I think it's so important for us to role model to our children the importance of our life as an individual away from being a wife and a mom. That we have things for ourselves that we go and do that we thrive, it help us thrive and to be happy. And that's just super important. It drives me crazy when I hear like on the news and say someone gets killed and they interview people that knew him and they'll go, well, he was so selfless. And whenever they use that word selfless, I just cringe because no therapist wants a person to be selfless. We want everyone to value their life, their happiness, create a life for themselves that makes their heart sing. And you can't do that when you're selfless. In fact, you need to put yourself above all things, because if you take care of yourself so that you can have a sparkle in your eye and a spring in your step, and then that trickles down to everything else that you're doing. So
Right.
selfless means deplete yourself, give to others, and neglect yourself. And that's a recipe for suffering, depression, anxiety, and a bunch of
Not
mental
to mention, it's funny that you're bringing this up because I had someone on that had written the book, The Selfish Year. And it was so enlightening because she shared that she spent a whole year and she just said, I'm going to be selfish. I'm going to do. And she ended up having more of an impact, helping more people, being more available than she ever had in her life. Isn't that interesting? So if you really want to serve and use your calling, take care, feed yourself, take care of yourself.
Well, I forbid my clients to use the word selfish because I think that word is a shaming word and it insinuates that you're doing something wrong.
Yes, it
And
does.
and I don't like it. Because it discourages self-care. I'll be talking about one of my depleted clients who's barely hanging on and they're always doing for others, always doing for
Yeah.
others. And I'll go, let's get you to, start developing your individualism, and you set up a life that works for you. Well, isn't that selfish? They say. I hear that all
Yeah.
the time. And I'm like, our
I
culture does.
know. And I think
Culture,
too,
because it's that better to give than receive. But you've got to give to yourself. Like, if you don't take care of you, it's not going to get done.
I know I'm going to get a little preachy here because I think of that with like my church background, so yes, it's better to give than receive. But when I really sit down and I studied the Bible, I'm like, okay, I really want to know Jesus. Like, what did he do? He went away by himself and rested. He did. I mean, that is an important piece. That's one of the laws, to take a day of rest. It is taking care of yourself. And we miss that. Or I like the one too, love others as yourself. I think I was loving others way more than myself.
That's a huge problem. That's a
Yeah.
huge problem. And I do pull that one out for some of my spiritual clients. And I really don't think there's any religion that's asking that's truly based in love, that's asking
No.
the people who adhere to it to suffer and sacrifice themselves.
And I
I mean,
think we can
supposed to
miss
be happy in this life.
he wants us to be joyful, and I think that we misunderstand that piece.
I think so.
Because yeah, I think that yeah, especially when you are a people pleaser and a rule follower, you know what I mean? You want to be better and you think it's
That commandment, honor thy father and thy mother, that really messes with some of my clients who need to set boundaries with their biological
okay. So
parents.
let's talk about, you know what? I'm so glad you brought that up because I was thinking too, you talked a little bit. I'm going to bounce back a little bit talking about parents. You talked about trauma from
Mhm.
childhood. And what I want to say is whether it was a huge, big thing that happened or something that maybe doesn't look that big, but maybe you didn't feel loved, or maybe, you know what I mean? Maybe you had a big, there's something that can trigger that. And it doesn't mean that you were hit over the head or beaten or, you know what I mean? Neglected. It can happen in pretty good circumstances too. Am I right or am I wrong?
Look, 99.9999% of us have a ton, thousands of childhood trauma wounds. The definition of what traumatizes a child is anything that happened that was less than nurturing.
Yeah.
So, I mean, the sky's the limit. And so not only did our parents, fail in that area many times, but other people do. And so
Yeah.
part of the deal
Yeah.
is, even if your family is loving to you all the time, and then when you go to school and you start comparing yourself to other kids, I'm not as pretty, I'm not as fast, I'm
Right.
smart, I can't spell as well, then that's traumatizing to a child.
Yes.
I didn't get invited to the birthday party.
Yep.
Didn't have I didn't have the right kind of clothing in school. I have clients that have tons of childhood trauma because their parents wouldn't buy them the latest fashion for school. And while that sounds egocentric, that's really important
Right.
to children, those kinds of things. And
Yep.
when a parent is denying you those things, it messes you up. I'm
Yeah.
sorry.
Yep.
You know,
Yeah, and so I think that's why it is important to understand that piece of your past, and I am all about understanding it, looking at it, realizing it's not true, and moving forward in a healthy way. So
Yeah.
I interrupted you when you were talking about parents because I just wanted to add that in because I think sometimes we can blow off if we weren't beaten over the head. We don't think we have this trauma, but I think we do. And I think my children do. I mean, I'm like, get therapy, get help. Sorry, just tell me what I did. And they have. They've come to me and said, well, you said this to me once, or I dropped a brick on my foot and you were on the phone and you didn't even care. I was like, oh my
I
God.
heard the same stuff myself.
So, but you were talking about boundaries with parents when we look biblically at honor thy father and mother. And you
Yeah.
say how that messes people up. Let's talk about that.
Well, it does. There's and a rule of thumb in recovery from trauma is every adult who can take care of themselves should be taking care of themselves. But there's an awful lot of able-bodied adults out there who use their children as do this for me, do that for me, take care of me, and they burden their children. Sometimes take away their children's, or at least attempt to take away their children's weekends, evenings. Like, or I need you to give me money. You owe me to give me money. Out of your paycheck or whatever. And a lot of my clients, just resent the heck out of it, and yet they believe that the Bible is telling them that they can't do anything about it. They just have to take the abuse or the expectations of their parents because of what the Bible says. And I'm like, no, no. Like,
Right.
it depends on, like, what you have to decide, what does honor thy parents mean? You can still honor your parents and say, no, I'm not going to spend every Saturday at your house. I
Right.
still honor you and tell you that I can't afford to send you money. you
Yeah.
know and so I think that, honoring does not mean giving your life over to someone,
What
or
does honoring mean? What does it mean?
it means a lot of different things for different people. It just depends. Um, I mean, it honoring might be like, I honor that you are my mother, and I, have a certain kind of feeling and connection to you for that. But when it gets translated into obligation and
Right.
tasks, you owe me. Those are some of the things that my clients' parents have said to them. You owe
Mm.
me. I expect you to. You will do this. I will be moving into your house. And
Yeah.
then my clients are fretting because they know that that will mess up their family system in a negative way. And yet they feel terribly guilty in saying no because they think they have to honor their parents and let them in come what may, but that's not true. You can
Right.
see
And I,
your mother and say, Mom, I can't have you move into my house and bring upheaval into our family. Like, I can't have it.
well, and I think there's some of us that, I mean, they love their parents and they bring them in as a solution.
Well, some want to, but others
Yep, and some are probably on the fence, and it's just hard because it's heartbreaking. It is tough.
it's a very tough situation. But I've got clients who become estranged from their parents because their parents would not respect their boundaries. And they don't, these people, when it gets to that point, usually they don't feel guilty about it. They feel
Yeah,
like it's like a last resort they had to do it
right.
because, if some parents are narcissists, and if you set a boundary with a narcissist, they're going to be nasty to you about
Yeah.
it.
Yeah, I've done that before with someone. I can not a family member, but and it was kind of recent. It was very, very interesting to
It
watch.
is. Some
Yeah,
narcissists go scorched earth, when a appropriate boundary is set,
right.
and it's just, you think like, my God, this is just, they're shameless.
Well, and it was interesting too because
There's an entitlement piece to it. I'm entitled
yes,
to have this.
it was a situation where I clearly was being taken advantage of, and I kept throwing out that this wasn't working. I need you to come up with a different plan. And then it had to just be like, I had to just get down and dirty and say, you got to do this or pay this, and yeah, that was an interesting situation. It is interesting, and you learn and you grow. And sometimes you don't know that about people until you find out that way, which is fine.
Which is fine. Just,
Yeah.
I'm just telling everybody, like, when you haven't set boundaries in your life and people have taken advantage of you and whatnot, and you finally decide you're going to do this, I think the first time you do it, the second time you do it, you are going to feel a huge amount of anxiety and
Yep.
you'll be fretting.
That's what I'm finding.
I want you to know that once you do it, you will be rewarded with relief. You will be so thankful for having released yourself from whatever it was that was hanging there
Right.
in front of you, and that's positive reward for having done the difficult thing, and it gets easier over time. I promise
Right.
you.
And what I want to say is, just like building muscle. I remember I was listening to someone about building muscle and having a lot of protein, and they're like, it'll take about 9 months to see a difference. I was like, who's going to do that? you know, but I mean, I've been doing it. I don't know if I see results yet, and it's been over 9 months, but um, just like that, I do feel relief, but it's been 3 years for the one friend. It's been a long time. It takes a while to feel that relief. And I still have a hard time with it. But what I did was I started noticing it. And then Becky, and now it's like kind of past time, but we're going to just give them some tools. I wanted to give you, I just wrote down quickly before we got on little things that help me if I need to set a boundary, where I just say, oh, shoot, that doesn't work for me right now. That makes it easy for me to
Please,
have something in mind, that if someone asks me to do something that I don't really want to do, then I can say that. Or sometimes it's if I'm feeling like, oh, a little like, oh, I don't know if I'm going to want to do that. Let me check my calendar before I say yes. So that buys me a little time to really think through. And then
those are
sometimes just say, I can't commit to that, but thank you for thinking of me. So I just like have these little
all
bullet.
all pleasers need to have phrases in their back pocket
Yeah.
to keep themselves out of boundary trouble.
Yep. Yep.
Like one of my favorites is I have too much on my plate right now. Um, and another one that I use sometimes is I can't do that. That wouldn't be healthy for me. A
Yeah.
lot, I'll tell you, when you say that one to people, there's nobody that will touch that one. After you've said it, they're gonna immediately back off because no one's going to keep going when you just told them that that thing that they just asked you to do would not be healthy for you.
Well, and Becky, what I love is I personalize that because it makes it a little easier for me. And I kind of went, ooh, I wish I could, but that just wouldn't be healthy for me right now. And you can say it in that way, like, I really do wish I could. But I mean, what a great, nice
It
way.
is. I've probably been alive longer than you, and to me, I don't want to leave any doubt. So I'm not
Yeah.
to say right now because I know enough boundary offenders who will call me next week.
Yes.
Well, is now a better time?
I think you're just better versed in the boundaries. So, okay, and Becky, this has been so amazing. And what I want to say is, we in this episode we touched a little bit on people pleasing, and everybody can tell I am a huge people pleaser. I am recovering. So, no, I'm not a huge one anymore, but in recovery right now. So, not healed all the way from that. And so Dr. Becky has agreed to come back in a month or so, and we're going to delve a little bit deeper into people pleasing. So, Dr. Becky, I think this has been so helpful. And just the tool that I want to leave listeners with are those little sentences that we gave them. And to just start becoming aware of that. Is there anything else that you'd want to add?
I just want to plant this once again in everyone's head. Don't give up your inner peace so someone else can have it.
Amen.
Don't throw yourself under the bus.
Yep.
If
And
you
that's
and it's so common for people to do it. So I want you to, before you say yes or no or whatever, when someone's asking you to do something that you know, like, oh no, I wish they hadn't asked me that. Just remember Becky's words. Don't throw yourself under the bus.
that's a great place to leave this. So listeners, if this episode encouraged you, please share it with a friend and come back because Dr. Becky will be back with us soon. Thanks so much for taking the time to be here. We love having you.
Thanks, Lisa. I appreciate it.
Take care.